Have you ever felt like everything you once believed in just fell apart? Your plans crumbled. Someone you loved walked away. The ground beneath your feet began to shake. And you stood there silent, surrounded by the pieces, asking yourself, what is happening to my life? Or maybe there were nights when you couldn't sleep, not because of physical pain, but because of an emptiness you couldn't name. Everything around you looked peaceful, yet inside, it felt like a storm that wouldn't end. No one really knew. No one really understood. And truthfully, you didn't even know where to begin saving yourself. Maybe you've told yourself, I have to be strong. I have to get up and keep going. But the more you tried, the more exhausted you became. Like someone drowning in water. The harder you fight, the deeper you sink. The more you resist the pain, the tighter it holds on. So, where's the way out? The Buddha never promised life would be easy, but he did offer a path, one of compassion, of clarity, a gentle way to walk through what feels impossible. And in today's video, we'll walk that path together. Step by step, we'll learn to accept reality as it is, to understand impermanence, to loosen our grip on control, to return to the present moment, and most importantly, to realize that suffering itself can become the soil in which awakening begins to grow. So, if your life is going through a dark and difficult turn right now, pause for just a moment, take a slow, deep breath, and walk with me, one small step at a time, along the quiet, steady path the Buddha left behind. 1. Returning to the present, one breath at a time. When life feels chaotic, the first instinct of the mind is to run. We run back to the past, clinging to what once felt safe. Or we rush ahead to the future, full of worry. Where is this going? What terrible thing might happen next? But the more we run, the more we wear ourselves out. Because the past is gone. And the future? It's not here yet. Peace doesn't live in either of those places. It only exists in one place right here, in this very moment. There was a woman I once knew, a middle-aged teacher with a stable life, a loving family, and good health. But within 2 short years, she lost her husband, her job, and then her health began to decline. The first time she came to the monastery, she said something that silenced the whole room. There's nothing left for me to look forward to. Every morning, I wake up feeling heavy and hollow. But over the weeks, she discovered something that seems almost too simple. Conscious breathing. Just returning to a single breath. Not forcing anything. Not needing to fix everything. Just breathing. And realizing, I'm still here. And strangely enough, from that one breath, that one moment of not trying so hard, a small sense of peace began to stir. Not because everything got better, but because she stopped running. In Buddhist teachings, this is emphasized again and again. Mindfulness is the key that opens the door back to yourself. Not becoming someone new, not overcoming something huge. Just being fully present, right where you are. There's a phrase often spoken in meditation. You don't have to do anything extraordinary. Just be fully here, where you are. Because where you are is the only place life is actually happening. In this present moment, there's no need to strain to fix the past. No pressure to control the future. Just return to the breath that's already in you. And you'll notice the mind starts to settle like a lake whose surface begins to calm. Even the Buddha, after his awakening, often told his monks and lay followers, return to your breath, for there the mind finds its refuge. You don't need to go somewhere peaceful. You just need to stop and breathe. Mindfulness isn't something mystical or distant. It's as simple as realizing you're drinking tea, and you know you're drinking tea. You're walking, and you know you're walking. Not letting the mind wander. Not forcing it to understand everything. For anyone going through a crisis, this practice can be a quiet kind of salvation. Not because it fixes all problems instantly, but because it brings the mind back to its most natural state, present, without judgment, without resistance. And in that space, something almost magical begins to happen. The heart starts to heal, like soil that recovers when left untouched, like a body that knows how to mend itself when given rest. As one Zen master said, "There is no path to peace. Peace is the path." And that path always begins with something small, a breath. So if you're going through a time of fear, uncertainty, or restlessness, pause for a while. No need to force anything. No need to understand it all. Just breathe. Breathe as if this breath is the only friend you have left. And little by little, everything else will begin to soften. Because once you know how to return to the breath, to this moment, you'll be ready to learn the next step. How to accept what's happening without fighting it. And that is where we'll go next on this path the Buddha walked before us. 2. Everything is impermanent, even this darkness. There's a truth that sounds simple, but might be one of the hardest things to truly accept in life. Everything changes. Nothing lasts forever. And yet, it's because we forget that we suffer. We hold on to a beautiful love and fall apart when it fades. We hope that something, a job, our health, a person, even our own identity will stay the same forever. And when it begins to crack, we panic. In Buddhist teachings, this is called anicca impermanence. Everything in this life, the beautiful and the painful, is always in motion. The Buddha once said, "Like water slipping through your hands, time can never be held." I once met a widow at a meditation retreat. Her face looked tired, not just from grief, but from carrying it for 4 years. Not just mourning the loss, but being stuck in the question, "Why did this happen to me?" She said, "I couldn't accept it. I kept thinking, if I loved enough, held on tight enough, maybe it would have lasted forever." But love, too, is subject to change. And maybe that's what makes it beautiful. Because it's fragile, because it moves, because it ends. If every moment stayed the same, if people never changed, if life never moved forward, would anything still feel precious? The real struggle is that when we're in pain, we start to believe it will last forever. It's like standing in a pitch-black night, unable to see even a flicker of light ahead. The mind starts whispering, "You're not going to get through this." But that's just a feeling, not the truth. Look back at your own life. Haven't you been through moments you once thought were impossible? A loss, a heartbreak, a diagnosis. And yet, you're still here, still breathing, still walking forward. There's an image often used in Zen, a single flame in the dark. No matter how dark the room, when even one candle is lit, darkness is no longer complete. The night may be long, but there has never been a night that didn't end. It just takes patience to wait for the sun to rise, and clarity to not mistake the night for forever. So when you're caught in the storm, the most important thing isn't to fight the darkness. It's to remember this one simple truth. This too shall pass. Not as a cliche to ease the heart, but as a truth that has been lived again and again by millions who've walked this path, including the Buddha himself, who faced suffering, illness, and loss long before his enlightenment beneath the Bodhi tree. And once impermanence is truly understood, something softens inside. We stop clinging so tightly. We stop fearing change so much. Because we begin to see that everything is moving, like a river flowing forward. And maybe we don't have to swim against it. Maybe we can let go a little and learn to float with mindfulness and trust. There's a line from a poet that says, "Peace doesn't come from everything standing still. Peace comes from knowing that no matter what changes, you can still stand steady in the flow." That's what the Buddha wanted us to realize. Darkness is not the enemy. It's simply part of the river of life. And once impermanence is accepted, the mind begins to make space for letting go. And from that letting go, a quiet transformation begins. 3. Letting go of control. Learning to surrender. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from work, and not from lack of sleep either. It's the deep tiredness that comes from trying to control everything. Other people, situations, outcomes, even ourselves. Most of us have felt it. Wanting to hold on to someone, but they walk away. Wanting life to go exactly as planned, only for it to take a turn of its own. Wanting to always be strong, always right, always loved, but there are moments when the heart breaks, the mind stumbles, and we feel utterly alone. That's often where suffering begins. From holding on too tightly to things that were never fully in our hands to begin with. The Buddha made this very clear. You only lose what you cling to. At first, that might sound counterintuitive, because we're taught if you don't hold on, you'll lose it. If you don't control, things will fall apart. But the truth is, the tighter we grip, the more we risk losing. The more we try to control, the more unsettled we become. Think of a handful of sand. If you squeeze it tightly, it slips through your fingers. But if you hold it gently, not gripping, not letting go, it stays. A father once shared his story at a retreat. He hadn't spoken to his son in 5 years. Not because of one specific argument, but because of too many expectations. He wanted his son to live a life he had imagined for him to be strong, successful, just like the dreams he once had for himself. But over time, their connection turned into silence and distance. It wasn't until the father learned to let go, to stop trying to fix or control the relationship, that something shifted, not because his son changed, but because he changed the way he approached, the relationship softened. A door opened, not by force, but by surrender. Life is not a project to complete. It's a river with rapids, still pools, and turns you don't expect. And we're not here to paddle upstream, trying to control every current. We're here to learn how to let the oars go. Sometimes. Because sometimes, surrender is the only way forward. Buddhist teachings never tell us to be passive or give up. Quite the opposite. The Buddha spoke of right effort, acting with awareness, without attachment to outcomes. Do your best, then release your grip. Love deeply, but don't cling. Live fully, but don't tie your identity to what can be lost. Why does this matter so much? Because most pain doesn't come from what we lost, but from not being able to accept that it's already gone. The mind won't let go. It keeps repeating, "This shouldn't have happened." But that thought, not the situation, is what causes the deepest suffering. Letting go, then, isn't so much an action as it is a kind of trust. Trust that, even when things fall apart, life goes on. Even when plans dissolve, another door might open. Even when someone leaves, love doesn't vanish, it just changes form. Someone once asked, "How do I know when it's time to let go?" And the answer was quiet, but clear. When it starts to hurt not just once, but over and over again. When your heart tightens every time you think about it. When sleep no longer comes easily. That's when you might want to ask, am I holding on to something that no longer needs to be held? A drop of water can only return to the ocean if it lets go of the cloud. A seed can only grow if it first breaks apart in the soil. And a human being can only grow by releasing who they were yesterday. Once the art of letting go is learned, not through logic, but through lived experience, something shifts. A heaviness lifts, and a bit more space opens in the heart. And in that soft, open space, something beautiful starts to happen. The mind becomes wide enough to welcome the present moment as the living, breathing gift that it is. 4. Accepting reality as it is. There's something that sounds so simple, yet for many of us, it's one of the hardest things to do. To accept reality exactly as it is, not denying it, not avoiding it, not sugarcoating or exaggerating, just looking at what's happening and gently telling your heart, this is what's happening right now. When pain shows up, the mind's first reaction is often to fight it, to ask, why me? To think, this isn't fair. Or worse, to pretend everything's fine, smiling on the outside while something inside is quietly falling apart. But denial doesn't make pain go away. It only pushes it deeper into some quiet corner of the heart until one day it shows up again as sudden anger, as a kind of fatigue you can't explain, or as an emptiness that lingers even in your busiest days. A man once shared that 3 days after his mother passed away, he went straight back to work. No tears, no pause. He told his friends, life has to go on. But 2 months later, his body began to break down insomnia, chest pain, anxiety that wouldn't go away. Only during a guided meditation, when someone gently said, let yourself feel exactly what's here, did he finally break down and cry. Not out of weakness, but because, for the first time, he let the healing begin. In Buddhist teachings, acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It doesn't mean being passive or helpless. It means having the courage to face reality without being buried under the wish that it were something else. Acceptance means not judging yourself for being sad, for being broken, for being human. It means sitting with the storm, not letting it pull you under, but also not pretending it's not there, just being with it. The Buddha once said, you don't need to add anything to the mirror, just wipe off the dust. The mind is the same. You don't have to fix yourself immediately. Just stop resisting. Let the mind see and understand. Understand that suffering is part of being human. Understand that you don't have to rush to be okay again. Because sometimes, just sitting with your pain, just breathing with it, is the most natural, honest thing you can do. Think of how we care for a child who falls and cries. We don't say, why did you fall? We don't scold, you should have been more careful. We just hold them. We're simply present. So why not do the same with ourselves? In moments of deep vulnerability, what we need isn't fixing, but a kind of spiritual embrace from ourselves to ourselves. In Buddhism, acceptance is the foundation of compassion. Because we can't truly love ourselves if we're still rejecting parts of who we are. We can't heal if we still see our wounds as something shameful to hide. Only when we dare to face the darkness within can we begin to discover the light that's always been there. And maybe that whole process starts with one small sentence. I'm hurting and that's completely okay. When acceptance arrives, the heart softens. Not because the problem disappears, but because we're no longer silently fighting it alone. Not because everything is solved, but because in that moment, we've returned to something real. We've returned to ourselves. And once the mind has enough space to breathe, to just be something deeper can begin to grow. The understanding that pain isn't just something to survive. It's also the seed of growth and awakening. 5. Turning suffering into the seed of awakening. There's a question many people have quietly whispered in their hearts, especially in life's most painful moments. Why me? Why is life so unfair? Those unanswered questions often weigh us down, dragging along frustration, a loss of faith, and the feeling of being lost in our own life. But something strange happens when we stop, not to fight, but to truly listen to our pain. No more running. No more pretending everything's okay. Just sitting still and realizing pain isn't the enemy. It's a teacher, just one that shows up in uncomfortable clothing. In the garden of the spirit, suffering isn't something to be weeded out. It's the fertile soil where the seeds of understanding and compassion sink their deepest roots. Without soil, there can be no flower. Without darkness, there can be no radiant light. A young meditator once shared how he lost his job and went through a painful divorce, all within 3 months. Before that, he lived fast, confident, and never thought about spirituality. But when his life felt completely empty, he turned to meditation, not looking for enlightenment, but simply because he had nothing left to hold on to. In one quiet, still moment, he broke down crying, not out of regret, but out of gratitude. Because without that collapse, he might never have stopped to look within. He said, "I thought I had lost everything, but it turned out to be the moment I found myself again." In Buddhism, the Buddha never taught that the goal is to avoid pain. He didn't teach us to escape life. He taught us to understand suffering, so we could transform it into wisdom and love. One of his first teachings after enlightenment was the Four Noble Truths. And the first one is this: there is suffering. No matter who you are, rich or poor, brilliant or average, you will know pain. But the Buddha didn't stop there. He showed the cause of suffering, the way out, and the path of practice that transforms it. Pain is no longer a wound to hide. It becomes a doorway to insight. Each time the heart breaks, if we pause to look deeper, we begin to see what's real and what's illusion. And slowly, the heart softens. We're no longer rigid in our ego, our ideals, our belief that life must unfold a certain way. An elderly woman who spent 5 years in retreat processing the death of her daughter once said, "The pain is still there. It didn't disappear, but I no longer hate it. It taught me how to love those who are still here, with the part of my heart I had once closed off." So don't rush your sadness away. Don't force yourself to get over it. See your pain as a difficult guest, but if you invite it to sit down, to be heard and understood, it just might leave behind a gift. The gift of compassion. The gift of awakening. Because sometimes, light doesn't come from outside. It flickers quietly through the cracks in your own heart. The place you once thought was your weakness, but is actually where your wisdom begins to grow. And from that understanding, something new begins to bloom. No more resistance. No more drowning in the past. Just a gentle return to the present, with gratitude, with awareness, with presence. And maybe now, at the end of this journey, something has become clear. Life doesn't ask us to be strong all the time. It doesn't demand that we have all the answers. Only that when everything seems to fall apart, we remember to come back to ourselves with a mindful breath, to remember that pain is not the end. It is the beginning. And if we can accept it, soften into it, and look deeply, we may just find that something new is quietly growing from the broken pieces. No one escapes dark days, but light, it never really leaves us. It's always there, hiding behind a deep breath behind a silent afternoon, behind the moment we stop fighting and begin to accept what is. If this video touched something in your heart, a feeling, a reflection, a small ray of light in the middle of a storm, please consider subscribing to Buddhism Seeds so we can continue walking this mindful path together. Click like to help this message of peace reach more people. And if you know someone who might need to hear this today, share it with them. Finally, if you have thoughts, feelings, or experiences you'd like to share, leave a comment below because your words may be the light someone else needs to hear. We don't need to move fast. We just need to keep going. One mindful step, one mindful breath at a time. See you in the next video. May peace remain with you, just as you are.